On October 12, 1992, a father and son dive duo set out to explore a German U-boat in 230 feet of water off the coast of New Jersey. It was supposed to be a simple trip to fulfill their dream of diving into fame, but the deep, dark sea had other plans in store for them. Just 60 miles away from the shores of New Jersey, beneath 230 feet of chilly, dark waters, rests the remnants of a World War II U-boat, a German submarine that once stealthily navigated the American coastline. Many years after the war concluded, a bold team of divers stumbled upon this wreckage. In the year 1991, an intrepid diver named Bill Nagel, joined by fellow adventurers like John Chatterton and Richie Kola, orchestrated an expedition to investigate an area off the New Jersey coast where divers had reported intriguing sightings. Departing from the bustling harbor, John and his comrades embarked on a journey prompted by a tip from a fisherman who had detected an unknown structure on his sonar. As the men set out, they were uncertain about what they would find there. John, with courage in his heart, took a camera with him on a deep-sea adventure, going down a whopping 230 feet into the dark and mysterious waters. Down there, he and his team found strange shapes that seemed almost spooky and unknown. To their surprise, hidden in the depths was the wreckage of a German submarine from World War II. This amazing discovery set off a journey that would last 6 years, as they were determined to figure out which submarine it was and pay tribute to its crew. Being so amazed by what they found, John and his fellow divers made a promise to keep the discovery a secret until they could proudly say, "We found it." They wanted to avoid something called wreck jumping, which is when someone else takes credit for finding something or takes things from the wreck. They hoped to prevent this by keeping quiet until they knew more. Unfortunately, their plan didn't work out perfectly. Some of the team members couldn't resist sharing the exciting news with their close friends, and the secret got out much sooner than they had hoped. Chris Rouse, a 39-year-old dad, and his 22-year-old son Chrissy got into diving in the mid-1980s to break free from their routine lives. They were from a middle-class family in rural Pennsylvania and chose diving for adventure and self-discovery. Despite their arguments, the Rouses loved each other deeply. They often went on diving adventures together, but occasionally their competitive nature strained their relationship. Even though they were skilled divers, their overconfidence sometimes led them into risky situations. On October 12, 1992, the Rouses, Chris and Chrissy, geared up for another dive. Their target? The German U-boat, which is at a depth of 230 feet underwater off the coast of New Jersey. This expedition was led by John Chatterton. Now their motivation wasn't just another dive. They had their hearts set on retrieving the captain's logbook from this mysterious U-Who, all in the hopes of becoming famous in the dive scene. Here's the problem though. Money was tight, so instead of getting on trimix, they decided to save a few bucks and stick with regular air for their dive down to 230 feet. Now, this might sound like a smart financial move, but it turned out to be a decision that would come back to haunt them. Why? Well, once you dive beyond 200 feet, nitrogen narcosis becomes a real concern, and it's every diver's nightmare. The Rouses weren't exactly seasoned pros in the world of deep wreck diving. Prior to this fateful dive, their underwater adventures had taken them only as far as the Andreadora wreck. Fast forward to dive day, the conditions were rough, and both Chris and Chrissy had their reservations about going through with it. Yet lured by the idea of diving into fame, they shrugged off those concerns and took the plunge. As the Rouses went down into the water with experienced divers, they tried to explore a sunken U-boat. Their idea was to leave extra air bottles outside, but not having a backup plan caused problems. Once inside the wreck, they faced twisted cables and gear that had moved around. In the middle of this, Chrissy got stuck under a piece of steel while they were trying to free a canvas. Luckily, Chris was able to get him out. However, by that point, they had used up all their air. The water was murky, making it hard to see, and they couldn't find their way out. This forced them to swim up even farther from their extra air bottles. To make things worse, narcosis, a condition affecting judgment underwater, was making the situation even more dangerous. So the Rouses found themselves in a tough spot, dealing with twisted cables, running out of air, struggling to see, and facing the challenges of narcosis as they tried to navigate their way back to safety. As they ascended, the effects of narcosis became extremely intense. In a moment of panic, Chrissy attempted to breathe from Chris's damaged mouthpiece. The rapid ascent lacked proper decompression stops, setting the stage for decompression sickness due to the swift rise from the depths. During the ascent, Chrissy struggled to breathe, became increasingly desperate. Both divers found themselves in the grip of severe decompression sickness. The consequences of their hurried and uncontrolled ascent were severe. Chrissy's attempt to breathe off Chris's bottle failed, adding to the escalating panic. The lack of necessary stops during their ascent intensified the impact of decompression sickness. After reaching the surface, both divers experienced the debilitating effects of the bends, also known as decompression sickness. Those on the boat quickly recognized the seriousness of their condition. The bends result from nitrogen bubbles expanding in vessels and arteries, causing agonizing pain and potential paralysis. A distress call was made to emergency services, and a helicopter made it to the boat in 1 hour and 27 minutes. When the Coast Guard arrived, John Chatterton urgently asked a swimmer to bring Chris's lifeless body along with Chrissy on the helicopter. Despite some initial hesitation, the swimmer eventually agreed. John emphasized how crucial it was for Chrissy's morale to have Chris there, hoping it would inspire him to keep fighting for his life. The challenging decision to transport both divers meant extra time was needed to carefully load Chris onto the helicopter. Upon arrival at the Bronx Municipal Hospital Recompression facility, Chris was sadly pronounced dead. In contrast, his son Chrissy was conscious and able to communicate. However, Chrissy faced the devastating reality of being paralyzed from the chest down, mercifully feeling no pain. The recompression process began approximately 3 hours after their ascent, starting with pure oxygen and compression to 60 feet. During this procedure, as circulation returned, Chrissy endured intense pain. The compression continued to 165 feet over the course of 5.5 hours. Gradually ascending back to 30 feet, he eventually lost consciousness. Upon returning to 60 feet, Chrissy experienced heart failure, leading to his tragic passing. The subsequent autopsy revealed an unusual finding. His heart contained only foam. Survival prospects for the Rouses looked bleak, according to experts, the moment they surfaced from an exceptionally deep and extended dive. The challenges were particularly daunting given the rapid ascent from 230 feet to the surface, a scenario where even access to an on-site recompression chamber offered slim chances of survival. Susan Rouse, Chrissy's mother, received the distressing news of the accident from the hospital, although information was limited. Sadly, Chrissy passed away only 5 minutes after reaching the hospital, leaving Susan with the heartbreaking reality that she couldn't be there to see her son one last time. It's worth noting that Susan had contemplated joining her family on the fateful dive, but work obligations ultimately prevented her from being part of the tragic underwater expedition. Around 5 years after the tragic deaths of Chris and Chrissy, experts finally identified the wreck they discovered as U-869, a large submarine that sank on February 11, 1945. People tossed around different ideas about what might have saved them, like using trimix or having better communication, but none of these ideas could be confirmed. Following this unfortunate incident, Bernie Chowdhury, a dive expert who was also a friend of the Rouses, decided to create a lasting tribute. He wrote a nonfiction book in their memory titled The Last Dive, a father and son's fatal descent into the ocean's depths. This book serves as a way to remember Chris and Chrissy, capturing the challenges they faced underwater and highlighting the uncertainties and dangers that come with exploring the deep sea. It's a heartfelt tribute to their legacy and a way to share their stories with others. emphasizing the risks associated with underwater exploration. We would like to thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed watching, take a dive on the like and subscribe buttons and hit the bell icon so you get notified when we come back with another exciting diving story.